Hi, my name is Madison Hogan. I'm here with Atlanta Inno, and we are here with our first Bytes with a Beat. So if this is your first time joining us, Atlanta Inno is a digital media company. We are the sister site to the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and we exclusively cover tech, startup, and innovation in the Atlanta area. So this is our first Bytes with a Beat, so thank you for joining us. To give you a little description of what that is, these are short one-on-one virtual conversations with local founders, investors, stakeholders, and thought leaders. It's modeled after our newsletter, The Beat, which I hope you all are subscribed to. If you're not, please subscribe after the end of this. And these bites are conversational, fun looks at people, just quick little short conversations, about 20 minutes will be here today. On companies, people, and ideas driving the local ecosystem. So today I have with me Nate Washington and Christian Zimmerman with Qoins. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what Qoins does.
Nate, take it away.
Yeah, so my name is Nate Washington. I'm a co-founder and CTO of Qoins. And Qoins is a financial technology app. We essentially help people pay off debt faster through everyday purchases such as rounding up or payroll deduction. And we recently shifted and had a major focus on financial education as well. So coaching people and helping them getting their finances back on track.
Great.
Yep, my name is Christian Zimmerman, co-founder and CEO. Pretty much exactly what Nate just said around the Qoins product itself. But we've been doing it for three and a half years now. We've to date paid off over $13 million.
That is quite impressive. And actually the reason we have Qoins here today is not only just because of the wonderful things they do for us with our debt, but we also spoke with them for our anchor back in June. We spoke with them, we spoke with Zane Ventures. We also spoke with Opportunity Hub about different things that we're seeing in the ecosystem in regard to the racial injustice we're seeing in our country, diversity, racism, other things. Qoins specifically, after making I wouldn't say a stance, but you guys came out and wanted to have an open conversation with your customers about the Black Lives Matter movement, the killing of George Floyd, and what it meant to you as founders. And the reason that I reached out to you is I saw that you actually had some backlash from some customers. Not all of them, most support what you guys came out with, but I want to talk a little bit about what your initial reaction was when you first heard people coming out maybe negatively or supporting your movement and your stance.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you said, we kind of came out in support of the movement. Surprise, I'm a Black man, so of course it's something that kind of hits close to home for me. And we posted on social media, sent out kind of an email thread to our customers as well with a list of ways that you can kind of support the movement, right? And for us, I would say that some of the negative backlash that we got from whether it was customers or other places as well, our reaction to that was disappointment, of course, but also not fully unexpected. I think that unfortunately, as time has shown, there's always going to be people who are kind of opposed to you speaking out against injustice. They want to maybe turn a blind eye to it, right? And maybe pretend that it's not as big of an issue, or because it doesn't affect them, is they just don't really want to hear about it, right? So yeah, we were disappointed, but unfortunately not really surprised that there were people who were going to come out in opposition of our support. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that for me was obviously as well being like Hispanic and then Nate being Black, like we knew like probably what we were going to be getting ourselves into. But as a business owner, right, you never like expect that like just kind of what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, ends up becoming a bigger issue than it needs to be. what I've recently learned, is just people that kind of fall into the opposition of the movement, um, are really just don't really understand it. Some do, right? But others are just very ignorant, or just don't want to listen to the real premise behind the movement, right? And these are conversations I even had recently about, what does it really mean, right? It's not only Black Lives Matter, right? It's somebody says all lives matter, like, yeah, we know this, right? It's just bringing awareness to the current situation or the current problem. So.
So it's been about a month now since you guys came out, correct?
Yep.
What would you say, have you seen any change? Has anything else happened in the conversation with your customers? Have you reached out to other founders who maybe experienced the same thing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
go ahead.
knew that was going to happen. So yeah, I mean, there was an outpouring of support for sure. So we definitely had as you know, customers that were upset about it, as to kind of delete their account, or wanted to sever their relationship with us, and we obliged, and continue to kind of hold our ground there. But beyond that, we've had, whether it's customers or other founders, or, other members of the community, investors, people who are, who invested in us in the past. There's really been kind of an outpouring of support. And, it's really cool to see that, especially with a lot of with everything going on nowadays, and there being a focus on supporting Black owned businesses and things like that. There were a lot of people who kind of came out and said, "Oh wow, I didn't know that Qoins was a Black owned business as well. Like, I would love to support this as well." So it's been really cool to see that. The all in all, the customers that we lost, they're gone, and obviously it affects our business to an extent. But I want to say that we've started to rebound from that, and that we're headed in a positive direction.
I think he said it beautifully.
Perfect, perfect. Um, so now that some time has passed, we've had our own events unfold in Atlanta. Specifically, we had one of the most violent weekends that we've had in a very long time in the city of Atlanta, to the point that the governor has actually declared a state of emergency. There is certainly unrest. I know I've felt it, and I'm just a white woman living out in the suburbs. It's very clear to me that this is a pivotal time in terms of racial injustice. How are you guys feeling right now? Do you feel like any progress has been made? Are you having to repeat yourself? What's the general zeitgeist right now for you two?
Yeah, I mean, from my end, I definitely have to, like, I literally just had this conversation last night. And I think the toughest thing is having conversations with those closest to you, because you might have opposition, or just might have closed-mindedness. Or some people around you might have closed-mindedness around the current situation, because it doesn't directly affect them. So, it's very sad. It's tough, right, to continue to try to beat the nail, right? But even with the current, like with what happened over the weekend, like, it's just crazy how close to home it is. Like, literally, where on Edgewood, like, I used to live on Auburn Avenue, right across the street. The weekend before, there's like the liquor store and Wendy's. Like, my fiance used to live right on that same street, and we live like 5 minutes away from them now. So it's just crazy how close it is, and it's obviously within your own city. So it just makes those things just feel like much more impactful. And for me, I think it's important that we continue to have a conversation, continue to figure out ways to find solutions. But it's not just gonna solve itself.
Yeah, I think from my end, well, speaking of progress, the first thing I want to say is that, Breonna Taylor's killers are still free. So we all need to continue to apply pressure there. But there's there's progress being made. You know, Georgia recently passed their hate crime bill.
Yep.
You know, there's been a big national movement on kind of talking about how policing is done and how can we reimagine what that looks like. And you know, some cities and states are a little bit further along in that process than others. But the one thing I will say is that while there is progress being made, it's not time to relax because of the progress being made, right? I think that just like a lot of conversations or current events that happen, right? You know, they come to the forefront. There's a big outrage, and then over time it starts to die, right? But we really do have to keep pushing for more change to happen. You know, we can't get complacent. It's something that we should be further along with in 2020 than we are now, and that's only gonna happen if we continue to apply pressure. So.
And to that point, I want to bring us to something that we've talked about previously when I was interviewing you for our anchor about what our current ecosystem in the tech community, startup community that you guys are a part of, that many of our viewers, I'm assuming, are also a part of. What are we doing correctly to address some of these issues? And what do you feel like we are lacking or doing incorrectly right now to address some of these issues?
I saw a really good quote from someone the other day. It said that minority and Black founders are over mentored and underfunded. That one really resonated because like I can probably go through like 10 different programs and get the same amount of education and know how to do the right things, but I still can't get any capital. And it's not to say like, right, there's other things that there's other determining factors, right? You have a good business model, et cetera, et cetera. But at the scope of it, right, I think it's only like less than 2% actually get funding. So I think from that aspect, we're still like not doing a good job of. From the good side, I do see some people starting to put their money where their mouth is. So like, you know, Google for startups, I think Google just created a $100 million fund. SoftBank just created a $100 million fund. Sequoia, I think, did $10 million. So you're starting to see, you know, people come. Netflix did $100 million. They're going to put towards Black financial institutions. So you're starting to see people putting money where their mouth is. Again, I think we're not going to see those happen immediately, but you know, we are seeing friends around us starting to get some of that capital that I think, you know, they've rightfully deserved all along. So I would just kind of say like that specific quote, I think ties really just exactly like what we are doing and what we're not doing, right?
Yeah, everything Christian said is true. It's great. The only thing I would add to that is I think the next step beyond funds and you know, investment opportunities is for tech companies themselves to make hiring Black and minority candidates or roles more of a priority, right? You know, just myself, you know, I'm a software engineer, you know, CTO, Black founder. I don't see as many people that look like me doing similar roles as me. So it's hard for me to kind of, I guess, have someone to kind of compare my experiences to, or even have someone to look up to, you know, when I was first getting into this field, right? Just because there aren't as many people that look like me in this field. And if they are, maybe they aren't as accessible or something like that, right? There's just not as many people that I can go to. So I think that would be a next great step. You know, the funds that are being raised for investing, they're obviously going to get the most press. But I think companies really have to kind of take a look at their hiring practices as well and what they can be doing better from that standpoint.
You know, it's so interesting that you both brought up the funding and also having that recognition and that diversity in all forms of the C-suite, you know, from the top to bottom, because that's something that's actually, I have heard from multiple sources throughout the entire month previously to this, specifically for the anchor that we did, Rodney Sampson, Shiloh with Zane Venture Fund, they all said the same exact thing. You know, I have tons of people to mentor minority founders. I don't have the capital, to the point that it was very disheartening for both of them that they continuously try to get capital and it's just not happening. So good news that we are starting to hear a little bit more about, you know, big companies or big venture funds promising funding like Google that you mentioned. I know previously we had talked about how some of these commitments are, you know, not as great as we think they are, right? Like they're small percentages of the actual fund, or some have critiqued they're just not enough. So what do you guys see as enough for a venture fund or a local community member? What is enough for you guys? What do you think somebody should actually be doing rather than just some lip service?
I mean, I think again, it's all very relative to the type of business model that you're building, right? But it's just if you look at the statistics and data, right, the amount of investment that a Black and brown founder will raise comparative to like pretty much anyone else, it's much less. I think it's probably like a third of what like an average seed round, right? For us, it's probably gonna be between 250 to, I think really that's probably really highest. I think we were very fortunate and we were able to raise a good chunk, but we still haven't been able to raise, like, I think that number that people look for is like, are you able to raise that like at least $1 million, right? $1 million like starts putting you into the like opening doors for like some other bigger dollars and a network that many of us really just don't have access to. And again, it takes time. It takes like other doors opening to get there, but sometimes those doors are open from the get-go for certain founders. Again, I try not to make that as an excuse, right? Because if you have a great product, and those should also kind of fall in place, but that's just really not the case. So I do want to give like one shout out to like Joey Womack, who like with Goody Nation, like he's been fighting both sides, both parallels of not only like mentoring and offering solutions and resources, but also trying to get capital by working with I think companies. His Goody Nation has been in partnership with like WeWork Labs, and so he's been closely working with them to also bring capital to the table as well. So yeah, I don't think there's any specific dollar amount, but I think there's those thresholds that you on average will see.
I think on the flip side of that too, I personally would like to see more, or continue to see more opportunities for smaller bets on founders that are Black and brown, either through, I guess, kind of like smaller, like maybe like safe notes or like smaller grants, right? So maybe anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000 or something like that. Because one of the side effects of systemic racism is that Black and brown founders typically don't have the opportunity to do a family and friends round compared to maybe some other founders who are getting started from the beginning. So, if you have the ability to do a family and friends round, you're able to take a few more risks in the beginning, right? You can delay your product launching, or hire someone, bring on some contractors to help out with certain things. But I think there's a lot of Black and brown founders who have companies that can really start to get some traction, produce some revenue, and do certain things that maybe just don't have access to the capital they need to really, really get going, right? For us, we were able to, so back in 2018, we won the FinTech South competition. And, that was essentially like a $50,000 grant that we won. That really kind of propelled us into the next stage of our fundraising process, because we were able to use that money to then go out and raise more money. And that that winning that competition was essentially our family and friends around, right? Like we didn't, we weren't able to go out and and raise $100 or $200,000 from family and friends, things like that. But I would like to see a little bit more of that as well.
Actually, and then one on top of that is also like 100% agree with that. I think the other problem is that there's the deals that we have to take if we want those are also just terrible. Like for me to get like a 25K deal or 50K deal, like they want the whole wagon. They want the whole company or a large portion of the company. So why does that incentivize me to even continue to want to building this business, right? So I think that's another issue when it comes to funding, because those that are willing to, at least in Atlanta, and this is a very big problem in Atlanta that I know it's changing, but it's still a problem. Is just like they want the whole pie. It's like that makes no sense.
Well, I know you brought up Joey from Goody Nation, which is a perfect example of somebody who's doing great things for our community. I'm hoping that you guys might be able to point out other people, organizations, firms that you think are really doing the right thing right now, who have really done the most, that others can align themselves with. I'm not sure if our audience is just, readers, founders, VCs, angels, who knows, but what organizations or people in the community do you think are really doing it right now?
Yeah, we'll definitely leave some people out unintentionally. So apologies to anybody that's left out from this. But another good one for sure is, well, you've already mentioned Shiloh with a venture fund, and Rodney as well. But Collab Capital is also a really, really good one. Joel Burks is also now the head of Google's for startups for the US. Collab's doing a lot of really good things. So they're one to watch as well.
Yeah, I would say I would echo all those. More than anything, I think those are all really good. I know Ty recently started offering really focusing in on minority and women-led founders. So like they're also kind of starting to put their money where their mouth, and that's a group of like angel investors. So these are all kind of just high net worth individuals within Atlanta that I think have started to change the narrative as well.
So I know that we talked about in the beginning how this all kind of started, right? Like you guys came out, you spoke about different ways that everyone can help with either Black Lives Matter movement or help to fight racial injustice, racism, all the things that you guys have experienced either here in Atlanta as people or as founders. I want to just touch on a little bit about what some of those things are, whether you're an executive or just somebody who's, working the grind in the local tech community. What are a few suggestions that you guys have to actually making a difference, no matter who you are?
Yeah.
For me,
what I would say.
Oh, go ahead. Let's keep doing it. We keep doing it. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I would say is if you are a Black or brown founder, no matter how far along in your journey you are, if whether you've raised like a seed round or an A or B, or whether you exited, right? There's always someone else that's coming up after you that is going to go through a lot of the same, or maybe even a little bit different growing pains than you. So I would encourage those founders, if you aren't already, to make sure you're taking time out to try to identify whether you're reaching out to people that you see and encouraging them, or whether people are coming to you. Taking time out to really just try to mentor, the people who are kind of coming up after you. That's something that, for me, we've had some success. We obviously still have a long way to go, but there are founders that I talk to, on a consistent basis that, even if I'm, right or wrong, or if I haven't experienced that situation before, maybe I can try to connect them to someone who has, because I know from my point of view, you know, and from my community and people that look like me, you know, the only way that we're going to get further as a community is together, right? So I really want to do my part and try to help out, you know, other people who look like me and are experiencing, you know, similar issues. So.
Yeah, same. Like I think I always give this analogy, like I'll always be putting a step ladder down, no matter how like big or small that step ladder is, right? Just because you don't have to exit to still share knowledge. Like everyone has some form of knowledge that they've gained through their, you know, journey. And from someone that's either in college or just about to start a business, like there's things that I wish I would have learned and not made mistakes of. The other, I think the biggest thing is sharing your successes, but more importantly, sharing your mistakes. Like I'll own up to my mistakes all the time and tell you like what I did wrong and what I wish I had done right. And I'm still making mistakes, but owning up to them and then also being able to make those changes to kind of continue pushing forward, I think resonates well because, you know, we just don't have that same playbook, right? So, you know, being able to share that there's other ways of doing these things is really important. I think it's enlightening because you see people that have gotten to that specific stage. So yeah, having mentorship, doing mentorship for those that are trying to get there, and then also having mentors of your own so that you can continue to progress and grow. One of my favorite things I always say is like, I'll just always be learning, right? So.
And
No, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one last asterisk I want to also add to that too is because I mentioned founders that are Black and Brown reaching out to other Black and Brown founders for mentorship. Even if you're not a Black and Brown founder, please, you know, one thing you can do is identify a Black and Brown founder that you can, you know, that you see trying to start a business and mentor them, right? You don't have to be Black and Brown just to mentor them. I know Christian said the quote that you know we're you know over mentored and underfunded, but at the same time there are people who getting into this space for the first time that just don't know or don't have the experience of founding something yet. So
these are great points, you guys, and I just want to hit home with this. Do you guys think anything is going to change at this point in time? Do you feel like change is happening, or are you optimistic, or do you feel like we have got a very long way to go?
I think it's a mix of both. Like, you know,
yeah.
I mean, it's 2020 and, you know, you would think that we've gotten farther than we actually are. So in that aspect, I think we still have a long way to go. But at the same time, I think we've seen that when we all come together and start applying pressure and really controlling our own narrative, that, you know, things start to change, right? We get heard, right? Bills start getting passed, right? And not at the pace that we're like, oh, let's just wait for it. No, like these things need to happen now. And I think that's the thing that people forget that are on like, doesn't matter what side you're on. It's we as a people have the power, and if things are right, if things are wrong, let's make them right. And it's not at the pace at which the government says that should be. It's if it's wrong, let's make it right.
Yeah, I mean, we're essentially fighting against generational issues. So it's not going to happen overnight, right? It's going to take time. I'm optimistic that change is happening, but it's going to take time. It's going to take years, right? And one of the things I've always said about more so specifically about Atlanta, but I guess in general, is that for funding and for funding in Atlanta for Black and Brown founders to truly change, there have to be more Black and Brown founder exits. And of course, those don't happen overnight. So I think we'll get there, but it's going to be, I mean, we're going to have to strap in for sure.
Well, do you guys have any other closing thoughts or anything you would like to leave the audience with?
No, I mean,
It's okay. No, it's okay. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody give a virtual round of applause for Qoins. And I just wanted to say that not only have I enjoyed your company, and thank you again for joining us with Bytes with the Beat, but I do want to stress to our audience that this is not just a 30-minute conversation. We are talking about something that has been an issue in this country, in this world for centuries. So I don't want you to leave this conversation thinking that we have touched all of it, because we have barely even scratched the surface. I hope that this has given you an opportunity to open your mind, think about issues that are honestly very difficult to comprehend. And I hope that you leave this conversation having learned something. So thank you again so much for joining us. As a reminder, please check out Qoins. And also sign up for the Beat. We will be recapping a little bit of this in our newsletter coming out today at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So you can go to atlantainno.com, sign up for that. And then check out our next Bytes with the Beat. We will actually have our 50 on Fire event before our next Bytes with the Beat. So please also stay tuned for that. It's coming out on August 6th, and Qoins is actually one of our 50 winners. So we're very excited to have you guys there. So again, thank everybody for joining us, and have a great, great Wednesday.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.